Welcome to the Business Focus podcast. Before we start, can we ask one thing? 74% of you that watch this channel frequently do not subscribe. If you've enjoyed our videos, please could you do me a favor and hit the subscribe button? It helps this channel more than you know, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the learning gets. Welcome to the Business Focus podcast. Jonathan Herps is the host of the Business Focus podcast. He is a strategic advisor, coach, and mentor to entrepreneurial business owners, CEOs, and senior executives. In this podcast, he chats with entrepreneurs, founders, and CEOs of scaling companies. It centers around their entrepreneurial journey so far and their aspirations for their companies.
Hello again. It's my pleasure today to welcome Mark Swinnerton, founder and CEO of Green Gravity. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Jonathan. Thanks for the time today.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me. So let's really interested. I'm a bit of a greenie, so I'm really interested in our conversation today. Tell me what you do, what Green Gravity does, and how long have you been doing it? A bit of background, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. I mean, just rewinding on some background, I had a career in global mining, and so did 25 plus years in mining. And in finishing my career there, wanted to do something very definitively in the climate space, but also that related to the mining sector. So Green Gravity was developed as a energy storage developer, and our business has developed a technology that can take legacy mine sites and turn them into energy storage assets. Now that's important because as we see an increase in renewable energy, we see an increase in the variability of production, and so we need to layer energy storage into the system to smooth out the production of electricity. So it's really important to enable the renewable energy. But secondly, it came to my attention that there are 20 times as many legacy mines as there are operating mines here in Australia. And so there's this enormous body of assets, nearly 100,000 legacy mines are in Australia, of which 98% have never been rehabilitated. So we had this huge opportunity in front of us. So Green Gravity's technology is really simple. It's called gravitational energy storage. And what we do is when there is surplus renewable energy, we lift giant objects up at a legacy mine shaft, consuming electricity doing so. And then at a later time when we want to dispatch that electricity back to the grid, we lower the objects back down again. And because we have a regenerative motor, it acts as a motor when we're lifting up or as a generator when we're lowering down the objects. So we're able to consume electricity or reproduce it. So that's our technology. It's at utility scale. So it's able to really match it with the big renewable penetration of the grid. And it's really low cost because we're reusing infrastructure and it has hugely long asset life. So it sticks around. It doesn't have to be replaced all the time. So that's the technology.
My non-scientific mind. So I'm sort of thinking about it like a big pulley system inside a vertical mine shaft. Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, correct. Exactly right. It's got big, heavy objects. It's got ropes. It's got winders and motors.
Okay. So, yeah, a different version of pumped hydro is what you're saying.
Correct. Pumped hydro without the water.
I'm sure the government would wish they'd gone with you rather than Snowy 2.0.
I think there's an opportunity for both, but certainly, the energy storage needs are growing rapidly, and one of the advantages of our technology, and we're still in advanced demonstrations, but one of the advantages is clearly we're able to deploy to pre-disturbed sites, which means the difficulty on permitting, on installation, it's much shorter timeframes. So we're able to get in, deliver, and be out, and operating within a couple of years, and that's going to be a huge advantage as the transition continues.
Okay. So who is your best customer? Is it the energy operators?
It is. It's really interesting. Since we've begun the company, dwelling on the question of who is our customer has been absolutely fascinating. And so it depends a little bit on the commercial structure as to precisely who the customer is. But if we layer that out and say, well, who is the beneficiary of the technology, and then we'll arrange it who's the customers. And the first beneficiary is the consumer of renewable energy. And so in that sense, an energy company, whether that's a big utility or whether that's a behind-the-meter consumer of renewable energy, the customer in that sense is the consumer, who wants stable, low cost renewable energy. So that's the customer. The ideal customer in that space is one who understands that they need to have the stable energy, and that as a result, they're willing to find the lowest cost solutions and most sustainable solutions to be able to sustainably deliver the low carbon inbound electricity. Another customer for us is the mine site holder, because we're also providing a solution to legacy exposure for those asset holders, and sometimes they're the same customer, by the way, and sometimes different. So the mining sector, by and large, is also broadly a customer to us, and we provide solutions to be able to transition assets, to be able to convert the value of historic assets, or indeed to help that owner, whether that's government or a mining company, to help them compress their Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions that may be coming off the, operations locally in that area.
So how long has the company been going?
We founded in 2021, and we kind of got, we kind of released the company early 2022, post early engineering and market validation. So we spent all of 2022 building relationships, building out the tech, really validating economics and deciding on the detailed plans. 2023 has been one of kind of deliberate action for us. We've built a very large demonstration facility in conjunction with BlueScope Steel in Port Kembla, and we're putting the final touches on demonstration plans for a large mine site trial in early 2024. So those have been the main actions we've taken during the course of this year.
Where I was going with that, I was sort of wondering, one of the questions I ask is, we've all been through the pandemic. What actions have you taken, stuck with you? But you really hadn't launched that stage, had you?
We hadn't. In fact, to some extent, the company was launched because of COVID. One of the reasons that I left my former career was because travel was impossible and I had a very distributed team. So I would say that the very design intent of the Green Gravity organisation is based on a COVID context. And so things like a highly distributed team, having all meetings and structures highly fungible to be accessed at any location at any time is kind of a fundamental design criteria for the organisation. And I think that serves us well. And you could say it's a response to COVID, but it's an evolution of how the workforce of today is working and how business processes need to accommodate that.
So tell me about the future. What does it look like, and what do you see as your main challenges going forward?
Well, I think the first thing is we've got to get the technology de-risked to a fully commercial state. And so that's, number one priority is remove the residual technical risk in the system. And that looks like us completing demonstrations in mine sites and completing the remaining digital testing for the technology through calendar 2024. And then we're going to partner that with the commercial readiness of the technology. So this is site-based studies and specific asset investment opportunities that get right up to FID status. And we should see the first of those spin up by the end of 24 with a view of 2 or 3 major investment decisions through calendar 25 to really start scaling the technology. So I'd say that's kind of where our future looks in Australia, which is getting the basis of the commercial flow rates right. We also have an eye on the global opportunity, which is nearly 98% of the future opportunity for our cash flow. And it's about setting the early BD activity in place there, and we're already very active in places like India and Eastern Europe. So it looks like, I think, forming the right relationships and commercial readiness in those markets over that, concurrently with that de-risking and standing up the first commercial sites.
So I'm going to go off piece a bit, if you don't mind. So you launched the company last year. Like, how have you raised? Where does the funding come from?
Yeah, I'd say the first funding through 21 all came from me. Through 22, my friends, ex-colleagues, and a couple of institutional funds at smaller, a few $100,000 each type of levels. But we raised a good $5-6 million through 2022 on that basis, which helped us sort of build out the case, prove out the market and the tech in an increasingly granular way, which then, of course, starts to attract the venture funds. We're wholly venture funded, unfortunately. I'd love to be in revenue now, but it's not practical with this kind of capital intensive tech. So we remain venture funded, and the real groups who I think have been most attracted to us have been the corporate venture funds, who kind of have a slightly different perception on capital intensity and timelines. We find many of the what would nominally be really attractive venture funds focused on climate, they really are post-revenue or not that interested in our kind of risk. And then the funds that have got the interest in the early stage tech risk don't have the appetite for the kind of check sizes we need or the capital intensity sort of structure. So that's been really challenging, but we are finding the right players, principally in Australia, but increasingly in other jurisdictions as well.
There you go, listeners. If you're interested in a fabulous green tech business, contact Mark.
My words, yeah, with real, a $2 trillion market in front of us as well, Jonathan, which is quite exciting.
And it's interesting, Mark, as I said to you before we started, we've had a couple of the interviewees have actually raised funds as a result of these interviews. So, wish you luck.
Thank you very much. We're always open to discussion.
That's right. So, you've had a very interesting transition, from large corporates, BHP, through to being your own business. What do you think has been your biggest learning since you've been a business owner?
I would say simplicity and the basics. We intuitively know it. And in big business, it can either be masked through there's systems and processes being provided, or indeed there's excess complexity that creeps its way in that you kind of tolerate. My learning in the smaller business and starting up an organization has been to be the need to be focused on simplicity and on the most important priorities is critical. We adopted an organizational process called EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating Systems, which has been extraordinary. That helps us focus on kind of priorities in the right drumbeat and keeps us from letting the clutter get in the way. So I think that's been really very important learning for us, is simplicity and focus on the most important things.
Yeah, look, I'm glad you talk about EOS. It's one of the frameworks I coach in my business, and hugely powerful.
Huge, yeah. Including reading the basics. So all of the people in our organisation read the basis of design material, which is easier to consume and very relevant, and helps people understand a lot about the why we run the processes we do. And actually, another reflection I had was, you can get too clever about things and think that, you could add this or add that. You don't need to. To me, keep it simple actually is the most effective outcome.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. And I just come off a call where I was talking with a client, and not only the KISS principle, but that how will I put it? Perfectionism is the enemy of both. That whole word. The whole the 80% solution and speed, rather than try to get to perfection.
Yep, and it's in your own control.
Yeah.
You think it's got to be perfect, but actually you set the scene of what the right, and you've got to set the quality that's right, but moving fast, insisting on delivery and taking that kind of imperfect approach. I think if you've got the right rocks set out, being the right midterm objectives in the right context of where you want to get to, fast becomes very important.
Yeah, no, totally agree. So tell me, when you think about the word successful, who comes to mind and why?
Yeah, I think that there's some really extraordinary characters in our own country that have stood up and doing things because they think it's right. So I think of like an Andrew Forrest or a Malcolm Turnbull type of characters who, and the reason I pick those sorts of names is these are people that don't have to do. They don't have to put their neck on the line and go take risks and be bold, but they are. And they go out and they try and do things on a principle basis and want to have outweighed impact. I think that speaks to a whole lot to what's possible for people. And so therefore I rate them as enormous leaders, irrespective of the precision of the detail of what they're doing, the fact that they've got the skills, they've got the ability to rally people, and they've then got the principled drive to get out and take risks and believe in what they're saying. I think there's a lot of lessons in that for all of us.
And the other one that, of course, comes to mind, it was in the news yesterday, is Mike Cannonball.
Yeah, correct. So he's in that same ilk of people who are doing precisely that, and they really, they don't have to take these risks or do these things and show this leadership. So I respect them for that,
and particularly in the green energy space.
Yeah, my word.
Betting billions and billions of dollars of their own money on things that government won't do. That's
it's so interesting, and even for people of that ilk, finding that they come up against the institutional inertia and pushback, I find that super interesting. And And that while I like to think there's no institutional pushback on the thing, that clearly there is. Yes. And, having people of that ilk fighting against that inertia also helps other small characters like, Green Gravity, for example, continue to have faith that we're going to get there in the end and we're going to just keep doing the right thing.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Are you a reader? Listen to podcasts?
I am.
What would you recommend?
Well, I go a little old school to some extent. First one I'd say is Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. Is a book I often recommend to people. It's a fundamental building block of interpersonal skills and how to be successful. Another book that I universally provide people in my teams is the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I think that's, again, fundamental book and doesn't age. And probably anything from Stephen Covey actually has a lot to like about it. And then a book that got some prominence more recently in recent years that I also found fundamentally brilliant was from the ex Procter and Gamble CEO Lafley. The book was called Playing to Win, and it was I think it was sort of co-authored by Roger Martin, and it was a book that kind of brought together a lot of the strategic kind of emphasis from Covey, and so sort of institutional strategy and so forth, and brought it into a context of how did Procter and Gamble go and win. And I just got a lot out of that book. I think it's something for any business person, a good, easy read and well worth it.
I haven't seen that. I just wrote that down. It's interesting. You talk about timeless, because most of these management leadership thinking goes back a long, long way.
Yeah,
and even Covey. I was coaching a client team yesterday about what I call the Eisenhower matrix, which is Covey then adopted. The important, the important, not
right. Yeah. Well, if you're running a war, you kind of got to get your stuff together, right?
Exactly right. But it all sort of stems back to a couple.
Yeah. But Carnegie, that's over 100 years old.
That's right.
And it's as relevant today as anything. You wouldn't have thought you could have something that would stay so relevant, but the fundamental skills of how people interact don't seem to change. Maybe AI is going to change that, Jonathan, but you never know.
Well, AI is certainly changing an enormous amount.
Sure is,
and I'm using it multiple times, 10 times a day these days. But it's once again it goes back to those basics.
Congratulations on using it 10 times a day. One of my reflections on the evolution of the latest AI has been integrating it into the way you work, or integrating it and prioritizing it as a potential tool. I haven't found easy, and I've noticed my team hasn't found easy. We kind of use it sporadically. We'll find a way to institutionalize it better, I think.
I suppose because I use it as a lot of what I do is about knowledge transfer. Being a thought leader and sharing that widely.
Yeah.
So I use it a huge amount in developing tools, developing blogs and source for podcasts. But it was fascinating. I last item this morning, because I'm forever learning. My current coach is a company called Dent Global. And Dent has been, they've got this program called Key Person of Influence, which is, I highly recommend, by the way. And all, since November last year, or December, when Daniel Priestley, one of the founders, actually invested in ChatGPT early. So he's had an insight in it. And, you mentioned, rocks, they taught me, and I now use this live, OKRs, objective key results. I use ChatGPT live with my clients now to develop their quarterly OKRs. I use, for their strategic planning, I use it live with my clients on strategic planning.
That is brilliant. That is brilliant.
It's about getting, and if you'd like to have a call on that, Mark, I'll be very, very.
I will take you up on that. It's an ongoing question in my mind as to how to be effective here. So that's a brilliant example.
Well, I'll even down, and it's all about the prompts,
Yeah.
Teaching ChatGPT hi, my name's Jonathan Herps. I'm a 63-year-old coach for founders, CEOs and leadership teams. This is my geography. This is what my core customer looks like. A lot of the questions I've just been asking you. Use Blue Ocean strategy framework to develop a strategy for my business. And then, down the rabbit hole we go with the prompts. And it's extraordinary what comes out at the end. So be very happy to take you through some of that.
Yes. Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
So any last piece of advice or parting words to entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs out there?
Only one reflection. The degree of broad-based support that I've received since I stepped out of corporate into a startup, it's been extraordinary. And I kind of sort of thought it'd be there, but it's been way, way stronger than I would have anticipated. And that's from all quarters of your kind of historic relationships or new forming relationships all the time. And more often than not, if I encounter somebody, I end up with a relationship with them where they want to help out. Like they're happy to do some discretionary effort or to be able to be a supporter of us in some fashion and whatever's relevant. And that is so important because what it trains you to know is there's a huge cohort of support out there if your mission and principles are right. And I think our mission in Green Gravity around accelerating renewable energy is something that everybody says, well, if I could help, I will. And so my recommendation to people is, if you're thinking about getting into an innovative space, do it and rely on the point that you're going to get much more broad-based support than you think, and don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah, it's a very, very good point. Mark, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jonathan. I really appreciate your time today as well.
As always, I've enjoyed the conversation enormously.
Well done, and great innovation on the podcast series as well. So congratulations to that.
Thank you so much.
If you are hearing this message, you've listened to the entire episode, and for that, we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We hope you enjoyed this new episode, and if you did, please leave us a review on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, or wherever you watch/listen. Please share this episode with others who may be interested in this topic. If you want to be a guest on the podcast, please send an email to admin@scaleupgrowth.co. Put "Be a guest" in the subject line and tell me a little about yourself. If you want to gauge where your business growth potential is and identify where the biggest opportunities in your business lie, or where the key needs that you need to concentrate on right now are, take our assessment where you will receive personalized advice for improvement. It's quick and free. Go to scaleupgrowth.scoreapp.com. If you would like to work with me one-to-one, I love coaching and get the best outcomes that way. Send me an email to jonathan@scaleupgrowth.co and put one-to-one in the heading. Tell me a bit about your business and let's see how we can apply a great strategy for your business. So that's it for this week. Tune in next time for more great learnings from a scaling entrepreneur.